My original plan for this video was to buy dice made from the most unusual materials I could find and then show them off on camera. But once I started shopping around, I quickly fell down one of the weirdest rabbit holes I've ever encountered. It started off as, that's strange, and then moved on to, ooh, that's gross, before quickly turning into, is that legal? If you thought gemstone dice or wooden dice were outside the box, well, buckle up, because I'm about to take you on a journey that includes everything from military-grade materials to 70-million-year-old fossils to human body tissue. Trust me, you will never look at the dice industry the same way again. When I first started working on this video, I was like, oh my god, what if somebody made dice out of, like, cheese or something? That would be so crazy. Sweet summer child. But edible dice does feel like a pretty natural place to start, right? Especially since so many dice look like they should taste delicious. And if that's crazy, then I am not the only crazy one, because there are plenty of edible dice on the market. Chocolate dice like these from Truffle Cottage, hard candy dice like these from Candy Counters, and of course, food-safe dice-shaped molds that you can use to make edible dice at home. I used one to make the giant D20 ice cube for this, but you could also use a mold like this to make stuff like candy dice or homemade gummy dice. No, not like that. Unless. I actually love the idea of just quietly using edible dice for a session without telling anybody, and then when you get a low roll, just absolutely lose it and eat the die in front of your horrified party. That's right, we don't do dice jail around here, we go straight to dice corporal punishment. Throw me and be consumed. Anyway, I ordered some edible dice back when I thought this video was going to be a traditional dice tour, but food was where it first started to get a little weird, because I quickly found people who were using food in their dice, but weren't necessarily going for edible. Back in 2019, a handmade dice maker called Angry Palm Dice took the tabletop internet by storm with some progressively more cursed food dice, including ramen noodles, mac and cheese, and SpaghettiOs. And while looking at these dice does cause my soul to shrivel inside me, they are not in fact made with real food. Palm painstakingly recreates each food item from polymer clay before enclosing them in resin. So thankfully, Angry Palm's ramen dice do not count as dice made from weird materials. But Rabinators sure do. At the request of a viewer, this YouTuber made dice with real ramen noodles using the beef flavoring as dye. The result is a low-key unsettling set. According to my extensive 2 minutes of Googling, it's not advisable to enclose anything in resin that contains moisture because it can interfere with the curing process, which is why this person, who enclosed one chicken nugget in resin, experienced a leak. And if you're asking yourself why they bought a Wendy's 4-piece meal and enclosed a single chicken nugget in resin, don't worry, they explain themselves. It's because they don't sell nuggets individually. Anyway, since ramen is dehydrated, it seems to have worked pretty well in dice. Although Rabinator did report that they smelled like beef when sanded, so yikes. But maybe I'm just being judgmental here. We don't consider inclusions of dried flowers or moss to be weird, so why should we bat an eye at dice made with ramen, or dead insects, or an old MacBook Pro? I mean, who am I to judge if somebody wants to make dice with human teeth, right? Wait, where did they get those? Is this the Tooth Fairy's side hustle? Once you start noticing dice with human tissue in them, they're suddenly everywhere. Small handmade dice makers seem particularly interested in enclosing things like cremated remains and human blood in their dice. One commenter in a dice collecting Facebook group that I'm in told me that their fiance drew both of their blood and mixed it together inside a liquid core D20. In a decade or so, this will either be an enduring symbol of their love or evidence being recounted in a true crime documentary. But I'm still not convinced that any of this should count as unusual dice materials, because the truth is, you can put almost anything in resin. If I wanted to, I could make dice with cat piss in them, or laxative pills, or toenail clippings. I just don't want that because I'm not a serial killer. So I pushed past the dice with bizarre inclusions and focused on finding the ones that were actually made of weird stuff. And unfortunately, it only got more complicated from there. But first, you have 60 seconds of today's sponsor to prepare yourself for what's ahead. Use it wisely.
Are you certain you need magic for this?
Yes, my minis take up way too much space, and they're such a pain when I DM on the go. I need a better solution.
A vessel of unmaking, then. Or better yet, just get Von Browse's new League of Dungeoneers acrylic standees and leave me to my work.
Unmaking? Is that dangerous?
Of course it is, and expensive. To weave such a spell, I require a silver mirror, 3 drops of dragon's blood, and a sacrifice.
Where am I supposed to find a willing sacrifice?
Who said anything about willing? Anyway, nobody's making you do it. Why not pledge on GameFound at the link in the description and get over 500 double-sided standees? The artwork is excellent, and they have all kinds of heroes, monsters, and other creatures.
I really think magic is the answer. I have a pretty sizable collection of minis already.
You don't have near the range Von Browse offers, and you've spent 10 times as much money on it. Imagine if you'd had this as a new game master. But no, let's talk about your foolish little ritual instead.
Great. What's the spell gonna cost me?
Your weight in gold. Oh, and your shadow.
You know what? I might take a second look at that GameFound campaign. So we've talked about dice with weird stuff in them, but there's a whole other category to explore, which is dice that are made from weird stuff. I know when I first got into dice collecting, I was really excited when I discovered metal dice and gemstone dice, because when you're used to rolling with acrylic or resin, those materials feel really novel. Some of the dice I encountered early on in my search were only really unusual because of how expensive they are. The 14-karat solid gold skull dice with diamond pips from Sterling Kisses might be $7,000, but somehow that still feels objectively less interesting to me than dice made with ramen noodles. Plus, they're just D6s. I don't play nearly enough rogues to justify that kind of price tag. Norse Foundry has a $650 set made from tungsten, one of the hardest metals on Earth, and Ether Objects has dice made from carbon fiber, which you may know from its use as a building material for airplanes and spaceships. But while these sound cool in theory, in practice, they kind of just look like gray and black dice. Right? If I showed you these two dice sets, both from Norse Foundry, would you be able to tell me which one was a $650 tungsten set and which one was a $35 zinc alloy set? For most of you, the answer is no. If the answer is yes, you either work in manufacturing or you're a real-life dwarf. Either way, cool. Of course, at least one dice manufacturer took the use of military-grade materials a step further. Some might even say a step too far. In 2018, a dice company called Level Up Dice announced that they were making a limited number of dice sets from a World War II tank. From which side, you might ask? Great question. The losing side. The owner insisted that they, quote, made these dice without any particular political connotations, but after thinking about it for another 4 full years, ended up releasing a public apology. There are mixed opinions on this whole thing, but I think we can all agree that at the very least, it was an enormously stupid PR decision. Once you start moving into materials that aren't used in military manufacturing, things get a lot more interesting. I found dice made out of fossilized coral, petrified wood, and even dice made of meteorite. You know, space rocks that have fallen to Earth. And yes, that is Gil of Don't F Me Gil Critical Role fame. According to Gil, meteorites are extremely difficult to work with, which might be why it's so hard to find these dice being commercially produced. Crystal Cast seems to be the only place that currently offers them as part of their Dwarven Stones line, but even though there's no sign of Crystal Cast being untrustworthy, I don't know, I'd be hesitant to drop $200 on what is supposedly a real meteorite D20, but has just one product photo that looks like it was shot with a 2001 Game Boy Advance. Now, meteorites are supposed to be pretty rare. According to the Meteoritical Society, only 5 to 10 meteorites a year are recovered by scientists. But that might just be because the folks at meteoritesforsale.com are hoarding them all so they can sell them for less than the cost of an electric toothbrush, so who really knows? The Crystal Cast Dwarven Stone line includes a few different rare materials, mostly fossils. They have dice made from fossilized mammoth ivory, dinosaur bones, and even dice made from something called a coprolite, which I know all about thanks to my dinosaur nerd of a dad. What is a coprolite?
Well, a coprolite is dinosaur poop.
Do they have value to science? Do paleontologists glean valuable information from coprolites?
It's possible that material could be preserved that tells you about their diet. And anything about the behavior of dinosaurs is incredibly valuable versus just the bone or the remnant.
That's wild, because I think when you think about a dinosaur bone fossil versus a dinosaur poop fossil, you'd assume the bone was more important. Would you mind really quickly just telling me your qualifications in terms of talking about fossils and dinosaurs?
Okay, well, I have a bachelor's and a master's in geology, and for about a year I've been volunteering at Dinosaur Ridge, which is right outside Denver, and it is run by professional PhD paleontologists, and they know all the stuff, and they're teaching me. I know enough to be knowledgeable to a group of 4th graders.
Honestly, that's good enough for YouTube.
Okay.
You can find all kinds of bone dice online: cow, camel, bison, and while some people get excited about it, the more skeptical among you are probably thinking, bone dice are so 3000 BC, that's old news. Well, what about if the bones are from a velociraptor, or a T-Rex, or a megalodon? Crystal Cast offers fossil dice made from all of those, and while that does sound metal as hell, I couldn't help but wonder if that was okay. I mean, there's a finite amount of dinosaur fossils on the planet. Should we really be turning them into dice? What if science needs them? How rare are fossils of dinosaur bones?
They're only found in certain parts of the country or certain parts of the world. In the US, there's a couple different formations that have a ton of them. So once you're in that correct horizon, they're relatively common.
But it sounds like there are dinosaur bones that don't really hold scientific value.
Right. This is one that I collected, and you can
That's
kind of
so
tell
cool.
that it is a vertebrae.
Yeah.
But it's not complete. If in fact this was, sticking out of the wall and there were 10 more in front of it and behind it, and it's a complete skeleton, that then has value.
How confident can we actually be that any given dinosaur bone fossil is from a specific type of dinosaur, especially if it is found separate from a skeleton?
You could look at the context of where you are, what type of bone it is, how common certain bones are in an area, but that's really it. So It's pretty unlikely that you can peg exactly what animal that was from.
If somebody's selling like velociraptor bone D20s, the likelihood is that they are not completely sure that's a velociraptor, because the thing that would make them most sure would be finding it as part of a complete skeleton, in which case you could not turn it into dice.
Right, yeah, the provenance of that, where it came from, would be a bit questionable.
So, in your opinion, is it okay for people to buy dice made out of dinosaur bone fossils?
I think it's probably relatively harmless as long as they're not collecting illegally or collecting scientifically valuable stuff and then chopping that up.
Okay. Thanks, love you.
Bye.
So basically, if you want T-Rex dice, my dad says it's okay, as long as you don't make a habit out of it. Throughout my dice made of weird stuff hunt, there was one company that came up over and over again, a Texas dice maker claiming to offer more than 200 different materials, artisan dice. From alligator jawbone to moose poop to marijuana, they offer dice made of things that absolutely no one asked for. But without question, the most horrifying offering of all are their infamous Memento Mori dice, crafted from real human bone. A single D20 is priced at $293, and a full set would put you back almost $2,700, which sounded expensive to me until I remembered that this is human bone, and then I got a little horrified that it's so cheap. These dice are supposedly made from retired medical skeletons, and even though it's tempting to call that ethically sourced when compared to, say, murdering people for dice-making materials, it's unfortunately a little more complicated than that. First of all, even if the deceased or their family agreed to donate their body to science, that is not the same thing as agreeing to donate their body to somebody's D&D table. But we also shouldn't ignore the fact that a lot of medical skeletons weren't ethically sourced in the first place. In a paper from the scientific journal Nature Communications, Sabrina C. Agarwal explains that for over 180 years, India was the main global source of human bone, exporting an estimated 60,000 skeletons a year. And while that gives me a ton of fun ideas about necromancy-based economies in my fantasy worlds, it's a lot less cool in real life. Historical accounts include these bodies being stolen from cemeteries and taken from families who couldn't afford burials or cremations. It wasn't until the 80s that the export of human bones was banned in India, and Agarwal says that hundreds of thousands of these red market skeletons are still in Western medical classrooms to this day. Basically, if you thought human bone dice sounded cursed before, it's worse than you imagined. Of course, all that is assuming that these human bone dice are being made at all. Artisan dice is notoriously scammy, with reviews all across the internet complaining about abysmal customer service, orders taking years to arrive or never arriving at all, and 2 different unfulfilled Kickstarters. One person left a review on their Better Business Bureau page claiming that they spent $3,000 on a full set of Memento Mori dice and just never received them. That must be extra tough for them, since they said in this review that this was meant as their wedding gift instead of a ring. They should track down the couple who put their mixed blood into a liquid core D20. I have a feeling they would have some great double dates. One Redditor even filed a small claims lawsuit against the company for delivering a poor quality Memento Mori D20 and actually won the suit, but the owner never paid up, so now he has a civil warrant out for him in Massachusetts. This guy's probably the only person in the world who can get in legal trouble for something as metal as selling human bones and still come out of it looking like a loser. This begs the question, is there an ethical way to source human bone for dice? I can't believe I had to type that question into a script for my Dungeons and Dragons YouTube channel. Anyway, I think the answer is yes, as long as the person whose bones they are gave informed consent. Personally, I think it would be sick if my bones got turned into dice after I died. I'm not using them anymore, and if I can't be a lich, that would be the next best thing. Plus, maybe then my ghost would be able to control the dice rolls. Criticals from beyond the grave. Also, people don't have to die for their bones to become available. Apparently, it is rare for a hospital to let you keep your own amputated limb, but it's not unheard of. This led me to Google, is it legal to own human bones in Colorado, which I expected would result in me being put on some kind of list, but it turns out you can legally buy and sell human bones in 47 out of 50 US states. So as long as you're not in Louisiana, Georgia, or Tennessee, you're all set. Basically, if for whatever reason you really want to own ethically sourced human bone dice, you'll probably need to procure the bones yourself. God, what a terrible sentence. I definitely have the collector's impulse. I own way more dice than I could ever need, and a fair number of them are about as practical as a wizard with a greatsword. So when I see a listing for dice made out of velociraptor bone, my first thought is, holy crap, what a completely singular item. What an incredible, weird, unique, special thing to have. But this search has also made me question why owning the rarest, strangest dice feels like such a win to me. The further I dug, the more I felt like those movie villains with these extensive private collections of stolen artifacts and taxidermied animals. If my dice collection ever gets a dramatic underlighting setup, someone please stage an intervention. Especially since, let's be honest, a lot of these dice look pretty boring. Frankly, if given the choice between meteorite dice and mac and cheese dice, I'd pick mac and cheese any day. Dice made from dinosaur poop sound like a fun novelty, but also they kinda look like shit. For me at least, I think researching this video showed me the limit of my collector's urge. I like cool, weird, interesting dice, but I don't think I need to be raiding museums or medical labs to accomplish that. I'll be going back to my dice with dried flowers in them now, thank you very much. If you want more weird dice, make sure to check out this video next. It's about the most useless dice I own, and I promise there's 100% less human tissue involved.